We all felt that Man in the Glass Booth on stage was a very sort of intellectual game-playing piece, and that for film we needed more emotions, more an emotional story. And so when Eddie Anhalt was writing the screenplay, that's what we were working towards, leaning towards more emotionalism. Yes, on stage that kind of intellectual game playing works wonders, but on the screen you need those emotions to carry through, and particularly so when you're, in a sense, doing a film with a message that has something to say about guilt and how people face guilt. We all face guilt, we have to, and to a greater or lesser degree, and some of us confront it, some endure it, and some are just break down under the sort of unbelievable weight of guilt that they have, and as it happens in Man in the Glass Booth, do very paranoid acts.
Yes, you're right. It is Rudin. Rudin the tailor.
Forgive us our paranoia, for we know what we do. Coffee, drink?
Coffee, please. Black.
Smile when you say that, partner.
Sit. So, you are making clothes for Charlie?
No, Mr. Goldman. He's just my cousin.
How much do I pay you, Charlie?
$800 a week, Mr. Goldman.
$800 a week?
Yes, sir.
I'm generous. Very generous.
You certainly are, Mr. Goldman.
And you can't afford a suit from your own cousin?
His suits are $800.
Well, that's one a week. Stop complaining.
Man in the Glass Booth wasn't easy to do. I was very fortunate to have 10 days of rehearsal with most of the cast, because it's a very mixed up piece by design. It's meant to keep you in a degree of confusion as you go through it. Is he the colonel of the SS who did terrible things to in the camps, what he did to the killings of so many Jews? Or is he a Jew who feels guilty because he survived the camp when others died? And we wanted you to not know which, and to have that sort of confusion going along. The film is kept very much like the play because it's character that you're discussing, it's character you're studying, it's guilt of people. It's that. The only time I felt a need to broaden or open it was to establish our lead character in such a way to know how successful he is in business terms. That's why there's the opening shot that looks out from this huge balcony out over Central Park and swings around and sees all the buildings in the southern part, and then the east side of Fifth Avenue, and around, and then comes around and picks up the Maximilian Schell character at the little place where he has the ashes buried, and then continues with him and goes inside the apartment and around the apartment. I did that in size terms because I wanted to feel how successful he was, that he owned the world almost, and yet he was overridden with guilt. It was interesting to do the exterior. Obviously was done on a balcony on Fifth Avenue and 57th Street. It was an office building, and I asked the production designer to create the doorway to the inside of the apartment that we would be using on the stage, to make it with sort of wide beam, or whatever you want to call frame, so that I could do a frame cut so that I could then pick up the same move on the stage, and so that you felt all the outside and the inside in one shot to give that feeling.
That woman ought to go on a diet. You say it's my birthday?
Yes, Mr. Goldman.
Friday, 20th of September. How old am I, Charlie?
You're timeless, Mr. Goldman.
That old? Thank you, Charlie, thank you. What's the temperature outside, Jack?
Fahrenheit or centigrade?
You know my preference.
68 1/2 Fahrenheit.
When we decided that we needed more emotions in the film and leaned it towards that, we tried, obviously, to be honest to Robert Shaw, to keep that intellectual game playing, but to create more of an emotional environment. And Robert Shaw became very disturbed. He did not like the idea, and indeed, if you will watch the film, you will see that his name does not appear in the credits, nor does it even say based on the play, The Man in the Glass Booth, because he wouldn't let us do it. He just didn't like the idea until he saw the film. Then he phoned Eddie Anhalt, the screenwriter, and congratulated him because he thought it was just kept the tone he wanted and did it so well. And he phoned Mort Abrams, the executive producer, to see if he could get his name put on the final credits. But it was too late to restore his name. All the prints were all made then. Donald Pleasance created the lead role originally and was wonderful. But because I felt strongly that we needed all these emotions, I felt that I would be able to get more of that from Maximilian Schell. And that's why we went with Max. And indeed, it's an unbelievable performance. I ran the film at I think it was the Berlin Jewish Film Festival. That was the first time I had seen it in about over 30 years from the day we did it. And I watched it because I had to Q&A after. And as I watched it, I was so bowled over by Max's performance. I remember I ran to the phone after and phoned him in California. And I got his machine. He was out, and I just gushed away at the machine because it's just an unbelievable performance that Maximilian Schell gave. Now, as I say, we had 10 days rehearsal and worked on it because we had no money. We had 23 days to film it and $1 million, and so I knew that there wasn't going to be a lot of time for discussions on the set, that we had to know where we were going. And then also while we were filming, I would arrange every Sunday with security at 20th Century Fox, and I would take Max, just the two of us would go on the lot, and security would unlock the stage and let us in, and I wouldn't let anybody else join us. And we worked, Max and I would work on whatever was the most difficult problem for him in the upcoming week.
Arbeit macht frei. Arbeit macht frei. Arbeit macht frei.
It was very difficult for Maximilian Schell, not just because he really carries the whole picture, but he's really two people he's playing two people. You don't know which person he is. And it was so exhausting for him, but somehow he brought that strength to it. I couldn't believe how much he did. I'm thinking his exhaustion led us to something very funny. We would go in on Sundays to rehearse, just the two of us, on the set. And one Sunday, security let us in, and we went over to the glass booth to rehearse what he was going to have to do the following week. And the booth was locked. So I ran to the phone, and I phoned the property master, and he was at the beach, and in those days there was no cell phone. And so I called the assistant property master, and no answer. So, and I thought, when we designed the sets, I said to our production designer, I said, Max is going to get very hot in that glass booth. Arrange an electric cord to the bottom of the booth, and we'll put a fan inside, so at least between takes we can keep the air moving. And I said, also, if you can make the top removable, the top section or the very top, when I'm not seeing that visually, we'll remove it, and again he'll get a little more circulation. So I thought, Max, that's what we can do. And I got up on a chair, and I reached up, and I finally got the top of the booth off and got it away. And then Max got up on the chair, and he started to climb up and into the booth, and I'm behind, and I'm pushing him. And finally we get him up and over and in. And indeed it was hot, and pretty soon his jacket came flying out. Then his shirt came flying out. And we worked about close to 3 hours. And what did we both forget? He has to get out of the booth. Now, we got hysterical, because how's he going to get out? I can't push him on that side. And he's on a chair on the inside of the booth. I'm on a chair outside the booth. And we're feeling so stupid as he's trying to climb up, and I'm reaching over trying to pull him. It took us about 20 minutes before he got out of it. To this day, we still laugh at ourselves.
Are you Jewish, Colonel?
Am I Jewish? Am I Jewish? I tell you this. My father was pure Junker. 103 now. Still doing great. One of the oldest guys in Germany. Cousin of Hindenburg. The Führer never forgot that. In some ways, he was a snob, you know. Am I Jewish? My dear madam, it was I.G. Farben who discovered this site. Very suitable for synthetic coal, oil, and rubber. I entered the place laughing. My first mission of that kind. They handed over their valuables and outer clothing. I put them in the anti-tank ditch. I laid them down flat. I shot them through the nape of their neck, gaining confidence at every pull. Sent in my report, very honest report. Never slept better in my life.
Oh, I was just thrilled when I heard he had received an Oscar nomination. We were very fortunate in that normally from that series you couldn't be nominated for an Oscar, because the film has to show for 1 week in either New York or Los Angeles during the calendar year to be acceptable for nomination. But the series was going so well that the Landaus decided to try it. Maybe they would try one film commercially, and they picked Man in the Glass Booth because it had gotten such good reception. And so that played a couple of weeks in Los Angeles and a couple of weeks in New York, and fortunately then Max could be nominated. There were many times in the film where we tried to create, how shall I say, noises or music, or maybe I can best explain it by the visuals, like when he looks through the telescope and sees the Nazi group and the little children, or when he sees his father as a peddler, where you don't know, is that Goldman seeing his father, or is that Adolf Dorf, the SS colonel, seeing that damn Jew that he didn't get to kill or that he did kill, and with each of the pictures. And so we did things so that you, the audience, wouldn't be sure who it is, and you just watch the guilt building and building, and obviously as the story evolves, we finally tell you who it is.
You don't plant beginnings, you plant seeds.
Mr. Goldman walked into the lobby of the 400 Lexington Avenue building. He crossed the lobby to the cigar counter where he first officially... Jack! What is it, Mr. Goldman?
Cognac, Jack. No, bourbon. Make it Jack Daniels. In my great grief, do I know what I'm doing?
What was it, Mr. Goldman?
My father. Pushing a pretzel cart.
Nobody's going to say, Mr. Goldman, your father was murdered in a shower in Auschwitz in 1943 at the age of 70. So he couldn't be pushing a pretzel cart on Fifth Avenue.
When I saw the film again after about 30 years, aside from just being bowled over by Max's performance, I still felt strongly about it. Yes, there were things I wished I'd done a little differently, or I wished I'd had more time. I looked at some things like, if we'd had more money and had time, for instance, I would have had him in the booth at one point with people Holocaust survivors who were in the courtroom, reflected in the glass, so that in a sense there was that sort of together look, even though the look was that they wanted to kill him, so to speak, and which I couldn't do because we just didn't have time or money, things like that. Man in the Glass Booth was very well received. We had wonderful critical notices, and lots of good word of mouth. The critics sort of cross country. I thought we made a fine film, but I didn't realize sort of how much it would grab people, and I think because it did so well, I think that's what gave them the thought of perhaps trying a commercial release of one of these, because these films were never intended to be big commercial smashes, so to speak. They didn't lend themselves to that, and that's what the whole series was about, bringing these wonderful plays that wouldn't normally be turned into film because of their lack of commerciality, but had something worthwhile to say, to bring those to people all across the country.
Maximilian Schell in The Man in the Glass Booth. The Man in the Glass Booth, on trial for history's ultimate crime.
Why are you making it so easy for us?
I assure you, I'm not.
You really do need a lawyer.
You do not understand. I'm going to win this case.
The Man in the Glass Booth. Does he speak as a criminal or as one of the victims?
On the day of judgment, he comes before God and zap! If he sinned, he gets it.
There's a lot of historical comment in the film about World War II and about the Holocaust and about guilt there. But if you notice, we also sort of snuck in the Vietnam War. We snuck in Arab-Israeli relations. It has its comment on the, what should I say, political scene, too. I don't remember whether it was a critic or a writer. I can't remember who made the comment, but they said that what one of the things that the film said to them was that there wouldn't be an Israel today if there had not been the Holocaust. If there had not been the Holocaust, the rest of the world would not have understood and come to the side of the Jews to have their country to be in. And there is a degree of feeling of that too, and truth there. So in his terms, or her terms, whoever this critic was, it made a very strong statement politically. The stars and the director were all working at about a tenth of their salaries. I'm just remembering on all the press junkets, they'd say, why would you work? They would ask us all, why would you work for so little money? And everybody said, because I want to bring theater to the rest of the country, not just to the big cities, that sort of feel. And I said that, but I also said, because nobody else would let me make this movie. Here was a chance to do a movie that was meaningful and dramatic, had something to say, a lot of intellectual feel, a lot of emotion, that didn't stand much chance of commerciality, but boy, you were just so happy to do it.